I'd like to remind you that the speakers will each speak for 30 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dignitaries, the organizers and students of Akal College of Nursing. On behalf of my nursing, that is Christian Medical College and Hospital, Ludhiana, College of, and my professor, Mrs. Punama R. Singh, really thankful. I wish to express my heartfelt thanks that this is the first time I'm here and I have been given this opportunity to present the topic. A few moments back, suddenly few ideas came into my mind when I was just sitting there. Few moments back, Dr. Darshan, she presented her study on breast self-examination, and at that time, I thought that I'll ask a question, and that question is already asked by my student Rupinder, and once again, I would like to ask the same question, that how many of us practice breast self-examination? So, including me, I think all of us don't think it very necessary or important to do it. And why am I asking you this question? Because I wanted to correlate this with whatever is written here, that is my topic, sepsis and septic shock. Basically, though it is written here, newer approaches, but I think that uh, the traditional techniques, the original techniques, and many of the nursing procedures that we have studied in our school time and school of nursing and college, those techniques need to be repeated, reviewed, revised again and again. And I feel that itself is a new approach. That means we need to educate the community regarding the techniques that help in prevention of sepsis and septic shock. So, because that is the most important thing. That is the prevention part in sepsis and septic shock. So when prevention is there, no sepsis will be there and septic shock will not occur. And the other thing is for we nurses, midwives or obstetrical nurses, that whatever techniques we adopt, that should be adopted properly. So in the prevention, starting from cutting of the nails of the woman, teaching her to cut nails, wash hands before and after defecation, uh, before doing the perineal care, after that, before using a sanitary pad, after it, and all the other hygienic techniques that we can teach a woman. We should emphasize and re-emphasize on that so that she does not suffer from sepsis. And besides that, nurses are practicing and obstetricians, when they are practicing simple procedures starting from cleaning the perineum, washing the perineum, sterile things, for example, cotton swabs, cotton balls should be used. If it is a home delivery, then at home even swabs can be boiled and kept for the time of delivery. Linen cloth can be boiled and dried and kept so that it can be used for delivery. And 5 C's, 5 cleans, we have already studied. Besides that, procedures like doing PV examination, uh, artificial rupture of membrane, amniocentesis, then DNC, that is dilatation and curettage, and so many other procedures. When all these procedures are being done, then we need to be assured, we need to assure ourselves and be sure that whatever equipment that is being used, it should be sterilized properly, autoclaved properly, so that we don't introduce the infection. When the mother is coming to the antenatal clinic and otherwise, we make sure that she does not suffer from any kind of infection. she should be taking good diet, she must take the tetanus toxoid injections and the iron preparation, calcium preparations, whatever is needed for maintaining her immunity of the body. If the immunity is maintained, she will not suffer from maybe hepatitis or malaria or typhoid or many other such kind of infections that can be a source of sepsis. So I'll begin with my topic. Please change the slide. So you can see the picture of sepsis and septic shock. I will begin with the definition first. So sepsis, as you see, the other name for sepsis is septicemia, and when there is entry of bacteria in blood or entry of viruses in the blood. Entry of bacteria will be bacteremia and entry of viruses will be viremia. So when this happens, that means there is insertion of bacteria or virus in the bloodstream. So when there is entry of virus or bacteria in the bloodstream, that is septicemia or sepsis. And when it is further complicated, it leads to septic shock. So what is septic shock? It is a serious medical condition due to sepsis in which chemicals are released in blood to fight infection and cause inflammatory responses. So what is septic shock? Before the septic shock, a pathophysiological mechanism begins. And what is that mechanism? In that mechanism, what happens? As soon as the viruses enter the blood due to any reason, I have already told you so many reasons or techniques in which contamination is there, and due to that entry of infection will take place. And because of that, once the bacteria or virus enters the blood, there is inflammatory responses, and when there is inflammatory responses, certain chemicals are produced in the blood. And why those chemicals are produced? In order to fight the infection. Just like antigen-antibody reaction. And when this happens, there will be certain mechanisms, for example, clotting of blood. Some of the thrombocytes may be damaged and affected, and that will lead to clotting of blood. And this, once the blood clots, when there is clotting of blood, what happens? That will reduce the blood flow. When clots are there in blood vessels, the flow of blood will be reduced. And when this blood flow is reduced to the limbs and the internal organs, what will happen? The oxygen supply is depleted as well as the nutrient is also depleted. And it will lead to further changes, that is reduction in the blood pressure and multi-organ failure, especially the liver, kidney, lungs, heart and the brain. And when these vital organs are affected, that will lead to so many symptoms also. And this is one indication for us, we midwives, that the observation of symptoms of septic shock is the first and foremost thing where we can prevent shock into going into a further serious problem. So if we are able to identify the symptoms early, we can save the life of the woman. So all this will lead to death if it is not treated. So these are the great things. You can see here, these are the great things that are responsible for sepsis and septic shock. So very commonly about 75 to 80% of organisms, they are the gram-negative organisms that would be causing sepsis and septic shock, and E. coli is the commonest, 50%, and others are Pseudomonas, Klebsiella, Proteus, Bacteroid and Aerobacter aerogens. And gram-negatives are also there, that is Staphylococcus, Streptococcus and anaerobes, etc. About 20%. So this is a figure of different organisms besides including syphilis and gonorrhea organisms. So what are the conditions in which sepsis and septic shock occurs? So first of all, they have talked about septic abortion. We know that when an abortion is being done by an untrained person, she may use unsterile technique, unsterile instruments, and unsterile articles or certain things, for example, pieces of wood to be introduced into the cervix, and in order to cause abortion, or tents, sponges or tents that may be contaminated. Such kind of things may be used, and that may further lead to ascending infection. Once there is infection, ascending infection via the fallopian tubes, the infection can even reach the peritoneum, and it can cause septic peritonitis. Besides that, sometimes infection can be of the chorion and amnion, that is, when there is premature rupture of membrane or prolonged rupture of membrane, and besides that, unsterile technique of doing PV examination again and again. So that can cause infection of the chorion as well as the amnion. Then affection of the pelvis of the kidney or the nephrons of the kidney, pyelonephritis. That can be secondary infection also, or the mother may be suffering from it before pregnancy also. And besides that, postpartum endometritis. So endometritis. So these are certain conditions that can lead to septic shock. Coming to the pathophysiology, it is a simple thing. First of all, because of those conditions, first of all, the techniques. If the technique is not an aseptic technique, that will lead to infection, and this infection can come in the blood via the vagina, cervix, uterus, fallopian tubes, or it can be due to other reasons, for example, abscess of a breast, and even in puerperal sepsis. So infection can reach the blood due to certain direct diseases or maybe ascending infection. So once is in the blood, entry of bacteria takes place in the blood, what will happen? Bacteria begins. And what do the bacteria do? They start producing certain agents that are known as endotoxins. And these endotoxins have effect on the capillary network. The bacteria, they produce endotoxins, and the endotoxins cause effect on the blood capillaries. And what is the effect? The effect is vasospasm. So that there is pooling of blood in one part of the capillary, and at the other end there will be constriction of the blood vessel. So vasospasm will lead to pooling of the blood in the capillary, and because the blood is pooled in the capillary, this pooled blood is not moving forward. That means venous return is affected. And when the venous return is affected, that means the cardiac contractility is decreased, and enough blood is not entering the blood, so cardiac output will also be affected. In other words, myocardial functions will be decreased. And this further can lead to cell damage. And not only this, we had talked about endotoxins. The endotoxins, they further lead to damage of the cells. And once the cells damage, they cause biochemical changes, complex biochemical changes, and one of it is clotting of blood and infection. Okay, and presence of metabolites. They are cytokines like tumor necrotizing factors and interleukins. These are the cytokines that may cause the damaging of the cells of the body. So metabolites will collect, and that will lead to further damaging of the cells of the body, and due to damage of the cells of the body, many other effects will be there, and major effects are damaging of the major organs, that is the lungs, the heart, the liver, the kidney, as well as the brain. And this will finally lead to mortality of about 30 to 100%. So we were talking about shock, and shock can be broadly divided into two phases, that is phase 1 and phase 2. So the phase 1 is the initial phase. This is the reversible phase. We can reverse the condition of the woman. We can help to revive the woman back into normal state. That is the reversible state or the initial phase. And it is also known as warm shock. And what are the things that happen here? There is mild vasoconstriction with compensatory mechanism operating. Because of the compensatory mechanism, constriction of the blood vessels will occur. But it will be occurring mildly. And then at this stage, in the initial stage, there will be normal blood pressure. The blood pressure changes may not occur, it may occur later on in the second phase. Why? Because the compensatory mechanism is in action. And then besides that, because of the compensatory mechanism, the pulse rate will increase. That is tachycardia. Why will it increase? Because the heart has to function more. Why has it to function more? Because it has to pump more blood to the different cells of the body. And because there is hypoperfusion and collection or pooling of blood in the capillaries, and because of pooling of blood, the oxygen exchange is not taking place, and enough oxygen supply is not reaching the cells of the body. So oxygen depletion is there, and amount of carbon dioxide increases, and when amount of carbon dioxide increases in the cells, that causes production of carbonic acid, and this carbonic acid can cause acidosis, and because of which we have to give bicarbonates to the patient to balance it. And besides that, there will be sweating, the extremities will remain warm, and patient will appear restless and anxious. So this is the first phase, and next phase is the second phase, that is cold phase or the late shock. In this, when the first phase is not treated, when the first phase could not be treated, it converts into phase 2, that is the cold shock or late phase. And this is the irreversible phase. The patient passes into a state of hypotension. The blood pressure falls down in this phase. In the first phase, it was normal, but in this phase, it will fall down. Patient becomes progressively pale, tachycardia persists, and due to intensive vasoconstriction, the periphery becomes cold and there may be sweating. So these symptoms should be remembered by the nurse, and we should have critical thinking and a sixth sense. Nurses should always have critical thinking and sixth sense, so that they are at the right time, initial stage, they are able to catch hold of the symptoms, so that prompt treatment and reversible change can take place, and we can save the life of the mother as well as the baby. Next. So this is just a kind of animation, and it is a male person has been shown here. So this is just for a general shock because of hemorrhage or neurogenic or anaphylactic, etc. It was not specifically related to obstetric. But here we can see, even though a male person has been shown here, but you can see that in the urine bag, here in the urine bag, the urine is cloudy. So what does it indicate? There is presence of infection, that is E. coli. And because there is presence of infection and urine is cloudy, that means the patient will have rise in temperature. So these are the things that we nurses can observe promptly at the right time and report, so that prompt treatment can be given, besides other symptoms. So this is the warm phase. And the second phase, that is the cold phase of shock, we already discussed some of the symptoms we had seen. And here they have only shown the skin is cold. We can touch the patient and feel it. This is the part of management. That is, we put the patient on pulse oximetry, we intubate the patient and put him on, Besides that, certainly we will see that the blood leukocytes more than 12,000 per ml cube. cutaneous symptoms, GI symptoms, and central nervous symptoms will be there. Specifically, these symptoms, beside these symptoms, respiratory symptoms are there, that is edema. Edema of the airway. Patient is not able to breathe. There is dyspnea, difficulty in breathing, wheezing, cough, chest tightness, hypoxia, and confusion. So all these are the other symptoms. If nurses are able to observe these, then we can make a difference. Next slide. So this is also a flow chart regarding shock, but it is related to generalized features of a shock. It is not specific, and they have given shock due to hemorrhage, shock due to fluid loss, shock due to allergic reaction, due to neurogenic impulses. But we are not considering all these. We just would see that how sepsis, that is when there is entry of microorganism, when there is entry of bacteria inside the blood, will cause vasodilation, and vasodilation will lead to heart failure, and heart failure will lead to decreased cardiac output, hypoperfusion, and cell anoxia, that is absence of oxygen in the cell. All these features will finally lead to shock, and shock will affect all these major, that is the internal organs. And because this mechanism already I had told you that there will be acidosis and cytokinins release. And you can see here, these are the symptoms. Because of decreased cardiac output, there will be hypotension, and hypoperfusion of the tissue, there will be cold and clammy skin. Because of the cell anoxia, thrombosis and edema will be there. Shock will finally be observed in the state, that means the woman will be in a state of sleepiness, or she may go into coma. Shock will also lead to renal failure, that is less amount of urine, less than 30 ml per hour or less than that, difficulty in breathing, and the GI symptoms because of the certain cytokinins that are released and acidosis that will cause GI symptoms as well as bleeding, that is hematemesis. And this hematemesis will lead to pyloric stenosis or pyloric ileus. So all these symptoms affecting the lungs also, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that will lead to death due to cardiopulmonary failure. So this is the physiological mechanism of septic shock. So now we come to the management approaches. Approaches are all the same, the traditional or original approaches that were being used since ages. All those approaches are there. Besides that, one or two new approaches will be there. So what this study was done by Rivers and colleague in 2001, and it was updated by Dellinger and colleagues in 2008. And after doing a study on a group of people, group of women, they stressed on the same thing. Whatever I had told you in the beginning, they stressed on the same thing. And what is the thing? Prompt recognition of serious bacterial infection. So first of all, recognition. As early as possible, the woman should be observed for the symptoms. She should be observed for symptoms, specifically if she is having very high grade fever, tachycardia, etc. That is an indication of infection. So in those cases, we should be observing for shock. Then close monitoring of vital signs and the urine flow. And hypotension, oliguria, and these are considered symptoms for septicemia and hemorrhage. So if there is septicemia and hemorrhage, that is, what is it telling? That hypertension and oliguria is there. Or in other words, it is vice versa. When oliguria and hypotension is there, that means there is septicemia and hemorrhage taking place. So we come to the next part, that is resuscitation. We all know about resuscitation. I need not to elaborate it. Next. So these are some of the things that need to be kept in mind while we are doing the resuscitation, that providing fluids and maintaining the CVP level to 8 to 12 millimeters of mercury, mean arterial pressure more or equal to 5, urine output equal to or more than 0.5 ml per kg per hour, and superior vena cava oxygenation saturation to 70%. Next. Then lactates. The lactate level should be normalized because acid can take place. Because of the pooling of the blood, acidosis takes place, and acidosis can cause increase in the lactates, acids. And there will be tissue hypoperfusion. So this is the next therapy. All of us metronidazole, and patients who are not able to bear the effect, or they are allergic to metronidazole, clindamycin can be given, and besides that, all this is the alternative regime to ampicillin and gentamicin, that is imipenem, piperacillin and tazobactam. Next, intravenous fluid, we are very familiar with this also, so IV fluid should be given. Next. Then correction of acidosis, bicarbonate should be supplemented around 50 to 100 milliequivalent. Maintenance of blood pressure. How do you maintain blood pressure? Drugs that are known as inotropes or inotropic agents. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine and dobutamine. These are the drugs which are known as inotropic. They help in raising the blood pressure, as well as they have antihypertensive effect. Then besides that, vasodilator drugs also may be given in certain cases, that is sodium nitroprusside, if the mean arterial pressure is more than 70 millimeters of mercury. So in certain cases only we can give. Diuretic therapy, we know that in order to reduce the fluid overload, the furosemide can be given, and to reduce pulmonary edema also we are giving furosemide. Then corticosteroids, specifically hydrocortisone, we know that it has multiple action or multiple effects. The most important effect is anti-inflammatory. It improves microcirculation, it reverses the metabolic acidosis, and improves the cardiac efficiency. So these are the effects of hydrocortisone. Then heparin therapy, because we know there is blood clotting in the blood vessels, so heparin therapy has to be given, as well as fresh frozen plasma. Digitalis has been recommended, but not always. It is not a specific treatment. It can only be given when there is features of failure or atrial fibrillation or flutter. Next, then elimination of infection. Hysterectomy may be done, but still it is controversial. Next slide. Then insulin therapy, because there is damage of the liver, and when damage of the liver takes place, glucagon hormone is produced, and glucagon causes glucogenolysis, that is release of more glucose will take place, and when more glucose is released, that will raise the blood glucose level, hyperglycemia. And to control hyperglycemia, insulin therapy is given. Then ranitidine, because acidosis has occurred, so ranitidine therapy is being given, and to reduce the stress-induced bleeding and ulceration. Besides that, nutritional support, that is total parenteral nutrition, and if the patient is conscious, able to swallow, oral also, about 20 to 30 kilocalories per kg per day, besides fat and carbohydrate. Then recombinant This is something new, recombinant human activated protein C therapy. I am about to finish. Activated protein C is given. Why is it given? To inhibit inflammation, thrombosis and promote fibrinolysis. So this is the therapy that is given, but still it is controversial. And autotransfusion, have you heard about autotransfusion? It may not be specific for septic shock, but when a woman is undergoing a surgery and lots of blood loss is there, then that blood can be taken, salvaged and purified. And the same blood can be transfused to the same woman. So that is this therapy. Next slide. So these are certain researches that are showing how to reduce. Here only the approach is the same, that is assessment of the patient timely and as early as possible. Next. So fetal concern is delivery can be delayed as far as possible. When there is chorioamnionitis, then only the delivery can be done. Otherwise, it can be delayed up to 23 to 35 weeks. 25 weeks. Next slide. So these you can read. These are not recommended. And last of all, next. So here also they are mentioning that resuscitation is important and timely assessment and evaluation and starting the treatment. This is also a research study. Next. आगे कर दो. So these were the two studies that were shown, but they mention all about the guidelines. Thank you so much.
It's a very knowledgeable and very good session or lecture, I say, about shock. I'll just put some more considerations here regarding